the general brought his troops to the edge of the White Cliffs of Dover in England, and they were 20,000 facing 80,000. And he said, burn the boats. There's no retreat. There's only one way for, and that's forward. So that burn the boats moment is something that is, I think it's ingrained in me, but it's ingrained in me over time.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more months than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident.
What does it mean to build something real? Not just a business or a brand, but a life with actual substance behind it. A life built on who taught you, who believed in you, and what you choose to do with that. Today's guest started with nothing but a work ethic shaped by rural roots and a handful of right mentors, and he turned it into something extraordinary. He is a former CEO, best-selling author, jet pilot, Hall of Fame inductee, keynote speaker, podcaster, and perhaps most importantly, the proud grampian to 20, just about 20, I just found that out, grandkids. His name is Jim Tracy, and he has built businesses, sold them, started them, and done it all without losing the one thing most people compromise first, their character. Welcome to Give a Heck, the show for people who want to live life on purpose and with intention. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and today we're going to talk about growing up rural, what it takes to build men of character, and why most successful people you will ever meet have learned to embrace uncertainty instead of running from it. Jim, welcome to the show. It's genuinely great to have you here to share some of your journey.
Oh, Dwight, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, man. And what a introduction to someone who really has embraced living life on purpose. I love your motto, man.
Yeah, thanks, brother. We never talked about that before recording. When I got in this industry, like my story, it blows people away. So, but this isn't about me. But when I got in this industry, I was trying to find my place in this world. Because I went from being an IT consultant, I own a computer company, electronics engineering background. I did a lot of consulting work, and at the end of the day, I didn't feel it was my purpose. Well, I got into this industry, fish out of water, into financial planning, and I had to find my place in this world. And somebody was saying something to me one day about purpose and intent, and I wrote down in my notebook, I want to help people live life on purpose, not by accident. And I was going, what? And my mission statement just came to flourish over the next 2 years. I started using it more and more. And it's the subtitle of my book, too, helping people live life on purpose,
Yeah.
not by accident. Too many of us are fish out of water.
Yeah.
Right. And it's tough, especially when you go from one industry to another. And in regards to your bio, I've started putting a lot more work into the bio over the last 2 years, because really at the essence, when a person's listening to the first few minutes of a podcast, it's ride or die, right?
Yeah.
You got to connect with them. And I find a good bio, and my listeners have told me too, makes a difference. So I
Yeah.
probably put more effort into that than I do the questions.
Well, that's really cool because at my age, you can't give a summation of, gee, Jim was a CEO, because there's a lot more than that. And it's the grind and the effort that led to that. And then it's the bigger part of the story for me is like, all of a sudden I turn around, I'm not a CEO, and you got 200 people that work for you, and you're like pointing and saying, hey, you do this and you do that. And then pretty soon, you turn around and you say, hey, somebody do that, and there's no one there, and your wife looks at you and says, would you take that garbage out? And I'm like, okay, it's not your role anymore. And so for a while I felt like a recovering CEO.
Yeah, it's role change can be character building. We'll just
Yeah,
leave it at
for
that, right?
sure.
It
For
it it
sure.
really can be. Even a role change, as we mentioned earlier, going from being just an adult to being a parent. It's a
Yeah.
major role change, and people don't realize the impact it has on their lives,
Hmm.
welcoming another life and having it be your focus. Hopefully, it's
Yeah.
your focus. Sadly, it's
Yeah.
not for many, but hopefully, they're like you and I, where family is first and foremost, and really and an intent and a purpose that'll always keep me driven, right?
Mm.
Because it's not just about my family, it's now the extended family of all my clients, right?
Yeah. Well, and if you can't get motivated about your flesh and blood, then you should really kind of examine, in your words, your purpose.
No, it's true though, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we'll get started. We're gonna have I am so excited to have our conversation.
Uh-huh.
One of the biggest things I like focusing on for me is always been a person's origin story. And people, poo-poo that. Well, just get to the meat and potatoes. I don't care about that person's origin or your origin. But how do you really connect with people unless you know their trials and tribulations? And I'm not saying people's childhoods are all bad. Some are great origin stories, some are a mix of roller coaster origins, some of them are just totally devastating origin
Yeah.
stories, but they still allow me and the audience to understand what made you tick. And oh
Mm.
my gosh, you are David. You are able to face Goliath, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
could you do me a favor, brother, and tell me what it was like before the Hall of Fame, before the businesses, before the Jets? What was it like being a kid from rural Minnesota growing up and to where you are a young adult?
Yeah, I was actually born in the northeast corner of South Dakota, up against Minnesota and North
Mm.
Dakota, and I was the sixth of eight kids, and then my parents adopted two more. My dad had seven boys and one girl, and a friend of his passed away at a very young age, and they had lots of kids out at their place. So just in order to provide insurance, they came and lived with us and were adopted into our family. And so, I tell the story a lot of times. My grandma stayed with us too, and so there were 13 people around the dinner table, and we
Wow.
waited, and we nobody lifted a fork or even sat down at the table until my dad got home. And so when he got home from work, but having that many siblings, one of the things I always talk about is that my lessons in loyalty came very early in life, because you know um, I can punch my brother in the nose, but if you touch him, now we got a war going on. And in many ways, my family kind of dictated a lot about who you were going to become, but it was formulated around character traits, really character traits that are essential to developing, I would say, young people into people who do what they say they're going to do. And that's a big thing in our world. But and so it was in northeast corner of South Dakota, rural town, little town called Watertown. It was a fantastic place to grow up. And then we spent our summer times out at a lake. And I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, a rich family with a lake cottage." I'm like, "Well, no, this was a two-bedroom, and there was a biffy out back. There was no running water, and we had to empty the slop bucket from underneath the sink." And there was no telephone. And so it was just a fantastic. I mean, we would go fishing, we would hunt gophers and rabbits with bow and arrow. It was just an idyllic situation for me and my brothers, and I couldn't imagine a better growing up. And at that, I get to layer on top of that, my grandpa and I were incredibly close, simply because I adored him. And so, yeah, and when you add to all that to all the rest of the people who built me, it's a pretty amazing story.
It does. As you've noticed, I jot bullet points down in notes so that I can stay
Mhm.
focused on our conversation. But sorry for the. I thought it was Minnesota. I don't know where I got that from, but Northeast South Dakota.
Yeah,
Um, so you have the 68 kids and then two adopted. You just had a family that was very about support, about
yeah.
helping one another out, which is
Mhm.
amazing. You said your grandpa was the person you were the most connected to. Did he influence you in your decisions as a young adult moving forward? Not necessarily that he constantly mentored you, but did what he connected with you and you connected with him, did it influence you in your life?
It did, and I would tell you that the way that it influenced me the most was I was afraid of disappointing him. And so I was so I hid a lot of times a bunch of what I was doing because I had a lot of evidence, especially as a teenager and a young adult. I had a lot of evidence of a misspent youth, and so I thankfully I learned a lot of those lessons early in life, and yeah, and when I think about him and his characteristics, when I talk about him, I talk about a person whose character trait is he's unwavering. He's like, I'm going to do and I'm going to choose the right thing, and it wasn't like this rigid thing. It was just a fact that you knew that that would happen, and he would not waver from that, not left, not right. And he was a doctor, he was a surgeon, but he was in this little town, and he came through the depression. He moved to that town, and during the depression, he would take chickens instead of money, and it was truly a barter economy back then too. And I just idolized him, and so his influence on me is difficult to even ascertain because it was so big.
Sometimes we don't have to put it into words. It's a feeling too. It's just
Yeah,
knowing that your grandpa was there for you can be, everybody says you have to hear it. Sometimes you just need to look and hear and feel it,
yeah,
right? Just by their actions and stuff too. So
for sure.
that's awesome.
And he had 40 grandchildren. So he had ample people that he could spend time in. He had a business that ended up, he had, hundreds of employees, and he was the only entrepreneur that I ever knew. And then take that to the next step. He would come up, doctors would take Wednesday afternoons off, and then they had Saturday and Sunday they didn't work. And so he would come up to his cabin, which was within range of ours. And I mean, I couldn't wait for him to get there. I would run down just to help him unload his. He had the coolest Jeep Wagoneer, man, and I would love to just go, because I got to rub shoulders with him, and so I would be the first one there, and I would haul his boxes and his groceries and his whatever in, and it was just my attempt. And I think I got to spend with extra time with him because I recognized that I felt the love from him, and I wanted to spend time with him and to rub elbows with him. So he was also a fantastic outdoorsman, and whether it be fishing or hunting or whatever. And so I got, because I invested that time in him, I think he just really valued someone who would hustle for him, and he paid it back by taking me with him when he went hunting and fishing and stuff like that. So
So he always poured
so
back into
grateful.
you.
Oh,
Always,
so big. Yeah. And it wasn't
yeah.
always with words. He wasn't a guy of a lot of words. Most guys weren't there, but it was like you said, a feeling when he looked at you. He could look at you and you knew whether you were doing something right or something wrong immediately. and he was just like I said, the personality characteristic that I assigned to him is unwavering. He never really went left or right. He just was so steady.
Yeah, I can relate to that. My grandpa's been gone obviously a long time too, and being a parent of 18 kids and all the grandkids
Mm.
and stuff, he ended up going blind in his 60s, completely blind. And
Oh
so I
my.
couldn't, the reason I bring this up is you talk about what we talked about visually seeing in the sight. I couldn't see that anymore in his eyes, but my grandpa had the biggest smile and chuckle, and his
Mm.
hands, literally, even as an adult now, his hands were two times bigger than me, right?
Yeah.
And he used to grab my hand, and it was just I could feel the love through touch. And
Mm,
I could feel the love and the fuzzies through his smile, right?
mm.
But I won't get into the details of him. We can talk about that another time. But I love how this relatability. My grandpa was pretty important to me too, and I still remember the day he passed away, and the struggles he went through up to pass away. But he
Yeah.
still had a smile on his face laying in the hospital. He talked about his garden. He talked about little stories of him and I. And do you remember this, Dwight? Do you remember that? Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I do, Grandpa. Where were
That's
all
so
the other
cool.
grandkids? Busy living their lives. To me, my grandpa was everything because of my health challenges. He was always there for me. And I was the kid. Maybe God made it so I had those health challenges. So I'd be the guy walking my grandpa around the block because he was blind. And we,
Yeah.
go take him out to the garden and say, okay, Grandpa, this is in front of you now. And here, and let him feel stuff. And you know what I
Yeah.
mean? That bond that we build with our grandparents, man, that's unshakable.
Yeah.
Even after he's gone, that memory is stuck forever. And I share it with as
Hmm.
many people as I can. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you
Appreciate
sharing
that.
that about. Yeah, I know. I appreciate you sharing about your 40 grandchildren. Oh my gosh. I have a hard time wrapping around the fact that my grandparents on my dad's side had, I think 63 was the last count. I gave up.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
can't even keep, I don't even know where some of my cousins live or
Mm,
if they're alive, to be honest with you. Too big. They've moved all over
yeah.
the place. But it's nice to hear that you had
Yeah.
that connection. It just makes me feel really good. So, when you look back at everything you built in your life, right? And you trace back to who you are today, your grandpa was so important in that. Is there foundational people along the way that weren't family that were imperative in your growing up to who you are today?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to hawk a book, but
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I have a 20 chapter book, and each chapter talks about a character trait, and that's related to one, two, sometimes three people who gave time and energy, but especially time and influence me. And so if as I look at the chapter with my brothers is about loyalty, like we spoke of just a minute ago, and what I talk about is how their investment in me, it infused loyalty into me as a person. And so, and it goes that flying business, encouragement. There's a teacher who's incredibly influential in my life. My
Wow.
father-in-law, my early bosses. There's just lots and lots of people who took this skull full of mush and tried to add something to him. There's a quote by Tom Landry. He was a coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and after they won the Super Bowl, one of the reporters came up to him. They said, "Hey, coach, now that you've won the Super Bowl, like, what do you have to do? Like, you don't have anything to do anymore." And he's like, "Oh, my job now is to get these men to do what they don't want to do, so they can be what they always wanted." And that adds
Wow.
a new layer to our responsibility, and if you think about Super Bowl as that dopamine moment, you haven't arrived. I mean, there's another game right around the corner. There's another race, there's another book, there's another speech, there's another podcast. It doesn't matter what it is. Those victories are cool, but they only last like that long. It's about the people that you're around when you're doing all that stuff. If you look at all those, football is a great example, because if you talk to people who are ball players, sure, they're going to tell you a little bit about the Super Bowl, but they're actually going to share about the people that they spent the time with, and that little dopamine hit, 20 minutes of glory, becomes less and less and less meaningful over time.
But it's like that in a lot of aspects of life, but sports is a good example. And even in yours and my life, we talked about it. I believe it was before we started recording. When do we arrive?
Yeah.
Never. I never arrive. Until the day I take my last breath, I'm going to be trying to elevate myself, because if I keep healthy mentally and emotionally and elevate myself, I'm always going to serve better. I'm
Yeah.
always going to have those little dopamine hits that maybe not winning a sporting cup, right? But it's a
Yeah.
dopamine hit of other things, right? So I agree with you. It's great to win the Super Bowl. It's great to win, like this. For me, it's hockey. I'm a hockey nut, so
Yeah,
Stanley Cup, and it's great to win all this stuff. But when you talk to these people, it's the love and passion of the game.
yeah,
And that's the same for us. Why won't I quit? Because it's the love and passion of the game of helping others. Because it
yeah,
is a game. It can be a game, right?
yeah,
It can be a real serious game. It can be a real lighthearted game, but it's still a game, right? So don't arrive, people that are listening or watching.
yeah,
Just celebrate your victories. Don't wallow in it too long and move on. There's so much more that you can do, right?
yeah. I talk about pilots in one of those chapters as well. And the reason I bring that up is that I got a seed planted in me like when I was 8 years old, and it didn't germinate until I was 47. And I was standing with my dad, and I was out in South Dakota. I was actually living in Washington then, but we were out in South Dakota, and a small plane went overhead, and I remembered that seed. And I said, Dad, when's the last time you were up in a small plane like that? And he's like, Oh, it's been decades and decades, and it was me and your grandpa. And we were flying around. We look at all the farms we worked at. We look at all the old hunting spots we were at, and we found all the cool places where we hung out. And I said, would you like to do that? And he said, I'd give anything to do that again. And that was in April. And that planted a seed in me. I went out and I took my first flight lesson on May 5th, and then I took him flying in October.
Oh
Yeah, I went
wow.
up to Fargo Jet Center and I rented a plane and I went back down to his airport and said, Come on, Dad, we're going to go flying. And I took my youngest son and him on a flight. And that spawned not only the germination of that seed, but I was then able to serve a whole bunch more people because now I've got this skill, and my grandsons are living, 5 hours away by car, but 1 hour away by plane. Now I get to serve my wife, I get to serve the company, and pretty soon I'm flying missions for Pilots for Christ and helping people who they're really out of options as far as transportation and they're desperate. And when you get to come alongside them, that's pretty cool. And then you're flying for work a bit, and then all of a sudden we moved to Boise, and I was flying from our shop in Bozeman, Montana, back to Boise, and I'm over the River of No Return wilderness area. And I look down and I'm in a single engine plane and I'm like, there's really no place to land. So I went home and I talked to my wife, and she said the phrase that every pilot longs to hear, honey, you need a twin engine. And
Uh,
so at 62 years old, there's a guy who's coming alongside me and he's teaching me how to fly jets. And it's not an easy thing to learn. It's an easy thing to do once you learn it, but it's not an easy thing to learn because everything in a jet aircraft is completely different. The sound, the noise, the speed, the everything about it is different. The communication, and so. But I found this whole, and this guy flew F-15s for 27 years, 22
holy.
years, and he was typed in 737, 747, 767, and I don't think a 777, but I mean, basically, he flew every day of his waking life, and then he was training pilots after that. After flying Delta, I mean, then he's getting in a jet with a little old dude like me saying, "Hey, do that, don't do that, and here's why." And so he invested in me. So if I can do that at 62, and I can learn to do that at 62 and then become really effective at it, those are the people who inspired me. Those are the people who took time to like uh, teach, train, cajole, perfect, and all the things that you need to do to be a pilot. It takes inspiration. The reason they do it is because they'll invest in someone because they love flying too. So
Well, it's a
yeah, it was.
passion. It's a
It is.
passion
It's a
that
total passion.
it's a driven passion that keeps your purpose going, right? It's just
Yeah.
It's awesome to hear, and we will get into your book a little bit more coming up here. But yeah, it's nice to know all the people in your life that you're willing to. How many people I've met in my life that don't give credit to people, right?
Oh
They just
my.
and which is terrible. You don't have to put them up on a pedestal, but
Hmm.
acknowledge those that helped you, that were based on piloting, that were your co-pilot,
Yeah,
right? Like the little corrections
it's
and course that a
crazy.
pilot
Yeah.
has to do, along with a co-pilot's help, if you're in a 747 or something, because if
Hmm.
you don't correct because of the curvature of the Earth, you can't. You're not just flying straight, people. If you don't
Yeah,
understand flying, right? So you've been blessed with so many good co-pilots from your grandpa
yeah,
all the way. Like
no
that's just
kidding.
awesome.
No kidding. And then you have an obligation. And one of your obligations is to always to help people. And so there's a lot of people that I've said, "Hey, come on with me, let's go flying." And you pass that passion along and you do it because someone did it for you. And here, I guess the popular thing to say is pay it forward. But when I paid it forward, all of a sudden you get new relationships out of it. Like I have two brothers that became pilots after I did. And so I'd like to
Wow.
think that I was able to pour a little water on their seeds. And now, I mean, I loved flying for what it could do for me, and they love flying because it's a feeling of freedom and it's like the coolest hobby ever. And so we approach it from different places, but I hope that at the end of the day their life is better because I had a role somehow in it.
Oh, imagine you have. When I think about all the people you talk about, how we have affected people and how we've helped them grow,
Mm,
and indirectly they keep our passions driven and alive as well. How
yeah.
many people, though, have you, Jim, with your amazing story, which we've barely scratched the surface of, are out there that you've helped you'll never know. And some people can't be satisfied with that, but I believe you are. Just like me, I told you a story about a person that I helped with their business, right? And they
Yeah.
directly reflected and said it was because of me. I didn't need to know that. It's nice to know how many other
Hmm.
people have I affected that are out there. And I don't look for the glory because God put me on this planet. I'm a God-fearing person, and I was
Yeah.
put on this planet to be healthy myself so I can serve others. So I don't necessarily need to know, but it sure is nice to know once in a while when we make somebody smile,
Mhm.
have that joyfulness in their heart, or they did anything because of us, is a true testament. It really wasn't us. We're just, in my opinion, I'm just a vessel, right?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
just like raising my children, right? They're children of God. I've just been chosen to be their parent to hopefully be their co-pilot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That also provides us with the encouragement to keep going, which is
Oh,
one of the reasons the older I get, the less I believe in retirement. And I say that because we tend to think in society today that we live this certain number of, or we work this certain number of years, and then our life stops so we can focus all of our energies on helping and adding joy to our own life. Like, it's no longer about my employees. It's now no longer about my family. Now it's all about me and my fishing pole or my golf course or my pick a hobby. I don't care if it's bowling or travel. If unless if you're doing it with a total inward focus, then it's almost impossible to generate any help for those people who still remain in your circle of influence. And that circle should be getting larger, not smaller. I see friends that are retiring and clutching their chest and falling over dead, or they're making new opportunities for people. And I think that's my role in life. I don't want to judge them. If you think you deserve your retirement and that's what you want to do, go for it. But I love hunting ducks, but I don't think I'd want to hunt ducks 300 days a year. And so I love investing in people with the skills, talents, and abilities that God's given me. And if I can do that, man,
The rest of your
that's
days?
what a way to go
Oh,
out. We
with
watched
a
a movie the
smile
other
on your
night.
face, brother.
Yeah, I want to rust. I don't want to rust out. I want to wear out.
Love it. You were watching a movie, sorry.
Yeah, I was watching a movie, and that line came from the movie.
Oh,
I want to
okay.
wear out, not rust out. Yeah,
Yeah, that it's so true though. Like I look at when we get to a point in our lives, we can breathe belief into others. We can
mm,
breathe into them the fact that they're worthy. It doesn't matter what age they are. I've had people that I've sat down and get sent to me that are in their 70s, right? And literally they have that, oh, I'm just gonna sit back and watch the paint peel on the wall. What why? What's your life been like? Just having conversations, building into the origin. Once I find a smile on their face or I see some positive energy, oh, let's talk more about that. And that's what we're put on this planet, not necessarily for me to help them with their finances or coach them on all the what they can do, what they can achieve. It's, do you really appreciate what you've been given? Are you
yeah,
grateful? Do you have gratitude for your life? And you can, even in your 70s, people listening, watching, like I'm shocked whenever I do look at my analytics, how many people from 65 to 80 listen to my show.
yeah.
What does that tell me? You still want to grow.
Hmm.
You still want to you want to be enthralled by Jim's story or other people's, and you can relate to it. You're trying to grow. And I always tell, I don't care how old you are, there's always seeds of greatness in you that you haven't watered. Maybe I can direct you to somebody that can help you water those seeds, that can help you.
Yeah.
For maybe you've never felt like you've ever done anything. Maybe you have. Let's see. Oh, that's
Time to
pretty
start.
exciting.
Even if you
Yeah.
haven't, it's time to start.
Yeah, exactly.
When's the best day to plant a tree? Well, yeah, you're
Today.
right. It was 20 years ago or
Yeah.
yesterday, but hey, you can still plant one today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it because
Yeah.
I literally, Jim, feed off of the energy of others, that I watch that epiphany, that light bulb moment. I don't care what their age are. And we're just talking. Like my first appointments aren't about numbers or anything. It's about, hey, I want to get to know you. What's your life monsters? What's your life
Yeah.
successes? And people look at me, what? What does that have to do with anything? Well, you are where you are because of your choices, and how much your learned behavior control that. We need to figure that out so that
Yeah.
we can drop that. You can get out of that comfort zone you're living in. And I'm here to tell anybody listening, your comfort zone can be broken, right? You
Yeah.
just got to be the willing. What do you want out of life? And find a good coach to help you get there. Because sometimes your friends and family, they can motivate you, they can pat you on the back, but there might not be the person that needs to be there in your corner, right?
For sure. For
Wiping your
sure.
brow off as you sweat,
Yeah. And it
right?
and to your point, age is not relevant to that. Last year, we went out and we got this berm that we do a little duck hunt on. And the my granddaughter, it was her first duck hunt. So I don't know if she was 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever. But she's on the low end of the age spectrum. And then my friend Bernie came with us as well. And Bernie came out, we got a chair set up for him, and Bernie's 89. And Bernie and my granddaughter both shot a duck that day. Who do you think was happier?
The
The
89-year-old.
answer is yes. They both were.
Oh, the both were okay.
They both had this incredible joy. One, that she was able to go out and shoot a duck and watch my dog go get it for her. And then Bernie was there, and how thrilled was he to go out and whack a duck and have my dog go out and get that for him at 89. So there you've got a 80-year spread between ages, and they both get this incredible joy from being able to do the exact same thing on the exact same morning at the exact same place.
That's awesome.
It's cool, totally cool.
But somebody at 89, the reason I said 89 is sometimes they don't realize that they're still moments in life that can make them go, ah, wow,
Yeah,
right? That aha
exactly.
moment. So that's why I said 89-year-olds. Obviously, a young person on their first duck hunt, your granddaughter's gonna love that. I haven't hunted since, because I live now in capital of Alberta, which is Edmonton. So
Hmm.
metro, we're 1.5 million
Yeah,
people. I grew up in a small community of 10,000 people. My dad owned a farm equipment dealership. Most of my relatives are farmers and
yeah,
hunters and fishermen. That's how I grew up. But I haven't hunted in 30 years, right?
yeah,
It's just raising kids as a single
yeah,
dad. Just, and then I,
for sure.
now that they're all growing up, I still relish in it. All my relatives give me stuff from
Yeah.
hunting, and, right? Fishing
Good,
I can still
good.
do myself, but yeah, that's an amazing story. We're gonna pivot a little bit away from that, and we'll get back to your book in a few minutes. I just want to talk to you from the garage to the Hall of Fame, and people, Hall of Fame can mean many different things, but so you, Jim, you built a legacy telecommunications company from ground up. Started in your
Hmm.
garage. Most people starting in a garage. Just look at where Microsoft started. Look where Apple started. Look where a lot of different successful people have started in their garage because it's free
Yeah,
rent.
yeah,
Right?
exactly,
It's
exactly.
right. You
Low
scale.
overhead.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You can put some pictures up, whatever. Right.
Hmm.
Eventually scaling into a multi-generational family enterprise before exiting through a merger. You were once upon a time inducted in the Wireless History Foundation's Wireless Hall of Fame, which I want to hear more about in a moment.
Hmm.
But you started in your garage, as we mentioned. Did you have an idea what you were walking into, or was it just let's just do it? We'll figure it out if we make a mistake, course correct, and move forward. What was that journey like?
I think some people um, are literally born to be entrepreneurs, and I believe that I'm one of those. And I was a really good employee, but I wasn't very malleable. So, so if I thought I was right, you were probably going to have to arm wrestle me to get me to do or not do what I thought was the wrong thing. And anyway, um, my son came home. I did international business as a young man in my late 30s. I was um, the director of international business for a large Washington State company, a private company, and we manufactured engineered wood products and things like that. But my son, because I was in the tower business as a young man doing electrical towers in Superior National Forest, really remote work, that was kind of enamoring for my son. And so when he graduated from high school, he graduated at 16. And by the time he's 17, he's out
Wow.
climbing cell phone towers. And I went out to his job site because I wanted to see it and I was interested. And the safety was not very good because they had young men that were full of testosterone that were doing this work.
Bulletproof.
And oh man, 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And
Yeah,
but
yeah.
anyway, he came home and I would chide him about safety. And then one night I finally said, "Hey man, someone's really going to get hurt on that job. You got to quit." And he looked at me, he said, "If you're so smart, let's do it ourselves. You want me to be safe? Let's do it ourselves." And that's the day that Legacy was born. So it was a bit out of fear that my son would get seriously hurt or even die on a job site from a fall. And so we started with just two of us and no customers and no. I had experience doing towers. He had experience on the radio frequency side of cabling and things like that. And it took us about 6 months to get our first bid out of that, and we got it. Learned some very difficult lessons. To cost me my full 401k, all my management incentive plan, everything I had. And so failure was it was a burn the boats. Failure is not an option. And we started that, and then pretty soon we added a couple of employees, and we started in 1999, incorporated in 2000, and by 2006 we launched our second location in Eastern Washington, and then just kept growing. And there's a lot of things that allowed us to grow. Because it was such a fast moving business, it was difficult for the industry to build quickly enough. And when you're a builder of that, then there's a lot of available opportunities out there, but you have a target in mind. And our target, what I learned in the international business was you always build that business as though you had to sell it next week. And so we always did things that kind of went above and beyond what was required, especially because we were in a fast paced business with a lot of demand. And so, but we always built for quality. And a lot of people would say safety was a cost. And I didn't think safety was a cost. Safety is one of the things we marketed. Like your company is not at risk using us because we're safer than anybody else. And I had a lot of great mentors in the industry and around the industry who came alongside me, and it was just a wonderful opportunity that God gifted to us to get in at the right time.
With
And
your
then,
boy yet,
yeah,
that's the thing that gets me right here. That's
yeah,
fantastic that you were willing to commit all that and commit your retirement stuff, your
oh
401,
yeah,
just like good for you, man. That I'm proud of you for willing to do step it up for God, but step it up for your son, right?
yeah,
To put yourself out there because that can hurt relationships. I have my son, he works in dangerous situations in the oil industry and the energy industry here, and I constantly am you're a grown adult, but here I'm still going to give you my opinion, and that's that tug pull
good on
situation,
you,
right?
good
Tug
on
pull
you, yeah,
situation. But good for you for starting that business and being willing to step out on faith. Once
yeah,
again, you've shown me like you've been willing since you were younger, and you just keep on being willing and being like
yeah,
an open sponge to learn. And though you made like you said, you made some mistakes
oh yeah.
whatever that adventure, that journey, that memory with your son, that's there forever. Like I can't even imagine how it changed his life.
He actually came to me, and he came to me in 2015, and he said, "Hey, it's been my dream to be a rancher since I was a little teeny kid, and if I
Wow.
don't start in that direction, I'm never going to get there because I'll be too old." So in 2015, or I'm sorry, about 2015, he said, "I'm going to work half time for the business, and then I'm going to work half time, and I'm going to have this old cowboy teach me about horses." And so he would, you know, leave at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he would go ride with this old cowboy, ride these rank horses for 6 hours, and then he would get done. And he would go in, drive into the office in a branch that we had, and he would work for, he would work for 6 hours there too. So he was burning the candle at both ends. And then in 2017, he came to me and he said, "Dad, I'm like 17 years into a 5 year commitment." And that's when we made the decision that we were going to market the company and sell it. And because I didn't want to do it alone. I mean, and at that point, it had grown big enough where I couldn't even afford to buy out my kid. And so we moved it into a merge with another company out of Texas and one out of Colorado, merged them together, and then sold it again into private equity in
Wow.
2019. And I worked for that organization for quite a while, and then was able to exit. I still own a little stock in it, but I'm not involved in day to day or on their board or anything anymore. So I get to help other people grow their business.
Wow. Do you believe tenacity is a superpower?
Hmm.
Because I sure feel that from you. You projected it to your son, right? Working
Mm.
part time, half time here, half time there. I
Yeah.
believe tenacity is a superpower that's very underrated. That
Yeah.
tenacity in the right way, being tenacious, you wouldn't have done what you wouldn't be where you are if you weren't tenacious. And I think
I
that's super.
I would agree with that, but I would say that as a superpower, it only comes from muscle memory. If you quit,
Agreed.
quitting gets easy. If you don't allow yourself, and I use that burn the boats analogy. Most people don't know where that comes from, but a smaller force was attacking England, and they saw the White Cliffs of Dover, and they were like, "Oh man, we could never get up there." So they went around to the side, but they went back up, and the general brought his troops to the edge of the White Cliffs of Dover in England, and they were 20,000 facing 80,000, and he said, "Burn the boats. There's no retreat. There's only one way for, and that's forward." So that burn the boats moment is something that is I think it's ingrained in me, but it's ingrained in me over time, and it really did start back with my grandpa and my dad. I talk about him as a commander a lot because he was a World War II guy.
Oh,
He's
wow.
a salty guy and a and if you started something, then by gum, you were going to finish it. And so that muscle memory, I think, is really an important part of character of who you become. And so, yeah, it's a superpower, but you can lose it if
Oh,
you don't use it.
yes.
Yeah,
And that's why I brought it up and asked you that question. I never thought about that tie, right? I know
mm,
it's there, and I present it and work it that
yeah,
way, but really that is a great way to look at it. Your muscle memory, because it is easy, right? Like I used to tell my kids, when they were really young, my oldest was getting bullied a lot. She was only in grade 1. And again, remember I talked about Les Brown, how much I
yeah,
appreciate him and listened to so many of his, for those people listening, yes, cassette tapes before,
yeah.
right? I actually had a record player growing up. We had eight
Nice.
track.
Oh,
But
yeah,
anyway, regardless of that, I used to listen to Les's tapes, right? And I learned little things. And my daughter, before she would get out of the vehicle, I dropped her off at school because we were having problems with the admin staff. And she used to say, Dad, I don't want to go in, right? And I used to tell her, no matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I'm gonna make it. Just tell yourself that. And it was stuff from Les that I learned, right? And I used to
yeah.
tell her, if and she, as an adult now, she's gonna be 40 right away. She said to me, she says, it always stuck in my mind. You used to tell me, Dad, if I'm gonna fall on my back so I can look up. Easier to get up. And it's easier to, move forward. And she used to, and I put her on to Les
That's
Brown
so
as a young
cool.
adult, right? But
Yeah.
it's just those little things that we can say, whether or not you want to call it an affirmation for them. But she used to say, she got to a point where she'd get out and she'd look at me and she'd kind of give me a little smirk grin and she'd say that to me, right? She used to say, no matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, Dad, I'm going to make it, right? And it's just things like that.
That's so fantastic. And one of the things that it reminds me of is that um, I had an opportunity to meet Les a year ago, and I looked around the audience that he spoke to, and I hear this story about your daughter through you being impacted. How many people? I don't know. I don't. How old do you think Les is now?
Well, actually, I do know. Now I'm gonna have a brain fart. He's mid 80s now, right?
Yeah, he's
Yeah, I just can't
actively
remember the
out.
exact age anymore.
He's out encouraging people from the stage, impacting their lives, and then by just osmosis, he's impacting your daughter through you. So look at the multiplication of encouragement that that old man sends out, and he just ain't stopping. He's
Oh my
just like he
gosh.
just keeps
I
going.
coach He taught me stuff that I still utilize in my coaching business, that I utilize with my clients in the finance side, with my kids, and his laugh. Oh man, it
Mm.
just brings me a joy that I can't even imagine. I still remember the first time I seen him, Salt Lake City, 1993. We jumped on buses here, and a bunch of us, we had a bus full, and 20 some hours later, right, we took the bus, went down to the border. They switched drivers up. Went right to this event, and I still remember him being up on stage and talking, and little Mamie Brown, and he talked about putting. You remember some of his stories, putting runway lights in the driveway and stuff like that. Like oh man, that guy's
And
touched
that
me. But you're
rolling
right though.
thunderous laugh.
Oh, you're right though. He has got a legacy that, in my opinion, will be around still 5, 6, even longer generations,
Generations.
right? And
Yeah.
he's got, and his son has helped take him to continue
Mm.
be able to, because he had some severe health
Oh yeah.
issues, that man. um he was supposed to come to Edmonton here. I had booked to go to a conference that he was going to be at. I paid VIP front row, and he couldn't make it because of his back, and he did it
Mm.
over video. Back then,
Yeah.
Zoom didn't exist. This is 20 some
Yeah.
years ago. And there's not a lot of people, Jim, you may not agree. I believe you can portray energy and compassion
Hmm.
and feel people through video, right? If you're the right person. I
Yeah.
can still feel the energy I felt from that man, and he was thousands of kilometers away down in the US, sitting there, and you could see him in pain, but he had a commitment,
Yeah.
right? And he apologized, I don't know how many times, for not being able to be there. But
Yeah.
it would have been more impactful him standing right in front of me, sure. If that's what I had to tell myself, that's the way I'm
Yeah.
going to get. But
Yeah.
being open, be a
Yeah.
vessel of wanting to receive knowledge. But yeah, we won't talk much more about Les. He's a hero of mine, to be
But what a
honest with
commanding presence. What a commanding presence who takes your he takes your imagination on a
you.
ride every time you hear him
Oh,
speak. Yeah.
his love and his voice and his
Mm.
genuine person coming across. He is the ultimate wordsmith, and I just respect him. And I got into people around the same time, like Zig Ziglar and all these other people. I even went back and listened to some of Nightingale stuff, and but less so, man. There's just sometimes people in life we just connect. And
Yeah.
that person is going to be my ride or die for personal development. And I've got lots of people I like, but the rest of my life, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Just
For
blessed. But
sure.
thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your take on less and
Yeah.
tenacity, and I really appreciate that. So you've been called the curator of culture, right? I want to
Mm.
know some more about that. But you also, because of that, I want you to explain what that means to you. But you utilize that to develop something called the culture revival blueprint. Blueprint, pardon me.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to share what I know about or what I've read, but can you tell me, how did that come about? Curator of culture, and then that revival blueprint.
Yeah, I was working for a company. They wanted to have some. I originally went in as a speaker, and I was supposed to like cheer on the troops and get them going. And I love doing that. I don't want to minimize that in any way. I think that if you can if you can stand in a group of people, especially who work together, and you can join that team back so they're marching together and they're looking at a single goal and they're moving as a unit, all of a sudden there's an opportunity for you to help a company be better. And that, from my perspective, that is first helping individuals so individuals can help each other so they can be a better company, so they can take care of their families, so their wives and their spouses or whatever get to go to the grocery store, and then they can do it again. And so I was done with this, and there was a circle that I drew up on, and I'm like, so if this guy who's the janitor and he makes the production people look good, and he makes the production supervisor look good, and they make the production manager look good, and they make the vice president look good, and they make the CEO look good, then all of a sudden, when there's no work, the CEO gets to go beg the customer for more business, and then the customer gives it to him because they know they trust the janitor, and it begins a
Oh,
circle where
wow.
everybody gets to go to the grocery store. And that's what we're about. We go to work for our families, not for ourselves, not for our kin. We go to work for people who
Oh,
depend on us every moment. And so anyway, I finished this up and they're like, okay, we want you to be our consultant. And I'm like, I'm not really a consultant. And they're like, well, you are now. And I said, okay, so let's see how we can help. So, as a builder, first of all, I said, like, why do you want me to do this? And they said, you're the curator of culture. And I'm like, curator, those are like dead people in museums, aren't they? And they're like, no, a curator is Latin. It means to care for. and you're the one who cares for our culture. So you're now the curator of culture. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's good. I like it. I'm gonna own that one. So I went back and they said, I want you to design a program for our company that helps us make it look like what it looked like when we began, because we can't get out of our own way right now. I'm like, okay, I can do that. And so I went back and I said, so how do you build? I'm a builder. How do you build a building? How do you build a tower? How do you build a house? How do you build a commercial building? Well, you start with an idea of what do you want to look like when it's done. So let's create a visual picture of this business of what you wanted to look like the day you began it. And then let's go back and let's check out the foundation elements of that. And then let's check out the wall framing and the windows and the drywall and the lighting and so let's create a blueprint of how to reestablish this firm to the picture of what it looked like when you had a dream. When because nobody here's one of the things, and I sometimes I get in trouble for saying this, and it doesn't bother me that I get in trouble for saying it because I want people to think. But nobody at any business that I've ever been at came to work and said, "It's Monday morning and I'm going to show up and I just think I just want to do a crappy job today. I want to be miserable and I want to make everybody miserable around me. So I'm going to do a crappy job at work." Nobody ever did that. Even on the day they were going to quit, they were going to go, "I think I'm just leaving." And that's quiet quitting today. That's the great resignation. Nobody comes in and says, "I'm going to do a bad job." But our job as people who manage them, as people who are supposed to lead them, is to inspire them and to give them confidence. And to do that through meekness and encouragement and belief and confidence so that they can be the best version of themselves. And then they add into that circle, which lets the guy who's the janitor go to the grocery store.
Wow. That is,
That that's what started the
oh,
business revival blueprint. And so
so impactful.
every business needs a blueprint of what they wanted it to look like when they began. Because if you have a dream, your dream is perfect. There's no flaws in it. But then, just like flying an airplane, we add gravity and we add wind speed and we add turbulence and we add a cranky passenger. And all of a sudden, now the plane is flying you instead of you flying the plane. Let's focus. Let's focus on the destination. And let's make sure we make those little corrections. We don't have to make those giant swinging corrections later because we're too far off course.
Oh, how many businesses though, Jim, are off course? Like I do a lot of consulting work with businesses, and not necessarily to the same scale as you, but have they've lost their way. They've got nobody in the ownership. If there's partners or there's a bunch of owners or even an individual, they got nobody course correcting. Nobody is a co-pilot, and they literally lose their way. And it becomes about money and growth, and they forget about the people. Well,
Yeah.
like you said, if the janitor has no value, it doesn't feel value, or the person that is running it, working in the mailroom or does admin work, or the person that's a manager, and then you got all the people. Everybody has to feel worth, whether or
Yeah.
not their value is different than yours. Right, the janitor has different value than the CEO. They're still a person, like you said, wanting to take care of their family. And if we focus on core values, like I always teach people, I focus on three main core values of faith, family, and work,
Hmm.
right? And I apply that to everything I do, right? And I
Yeah.
filter it through that lens. And when I look at somebody like you said, a janitor, and I think to myself, that person is stepping out on faith every single day, whether they're religious or not religious, or whether they believe in God or not, right? They're focused on wanting to survive. But is that a
Hmm.
way that we want that life to be for that person? Just survival? Or do we want them to have a place in this world, to have purpose, to have intent and reflection? Are you the person that walks into your business and somebody's cleaning something or doing something menial that you just think, oh, that's support staff, and you don't
Hmm.
acknowledge the little things they do for you? Every
Yeah.
time you don't acknowledge them, that can creep into their mindset. I'm
You
not
know, I
worthy. I'm
think
not
that's a
happy.
great point because a lot of people would say, "Hey, money creates that distance, or success creates it," and I don't necessarily think that's the case. Sometimes it could be, but I think more often than not, um, and I speak from the perspective of someone who had a business that we grew, and all of a sudden. Um, I was able to work with my son to craft my own course corrections. I needed those course corrections, but it wasn't because I wasn't paying attention. It's because I was really busy trying to make everything good and right and keep everything perfect and keep everything aligned and keep the customers happy and keep the insurance guy happy and keep the banker happy. And all of a sudden I was just torn in so many directions. So when people ask me the most important part of what I did as a CEO, I always have the same answer. We got to 100 employees, and I met someone out on the loading dock because I always came in through the back door. I met them out on the loading dock, and I'm like, I don't know this person, so I said, "Hi, how can I help you?" And he smiled and he said, "I work for you." I'm like, how is it that someone's working in this building and I don't know them?
Wow.
So I did two things. Number one, I started what we called Legacy Radio, and we would get everyone in the company on a live call. What today they would refer to it as a conference call, and and uh, and so we would get everyone, and we did it live, even though they told me not to do that. I'll tell you why later that they told me not to do it live, but um, we got everybody on a call, and they got to ask me questions because I wanted to answer their questions so they could know how I thought and they could know what my expectations were of our company and of their work, and so they could ask questions about maybe the future. They were nervous about it, and the technology was changing, and all of a sudden they were free to ask the CEO questions, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is really doing good stuff. And the second part about that is uh, my most important job is I began to write a personal birthday card to every employee every month and send it to their. So every month I would get a stack of birthday cards, and I had someone address them, but I hand wrote a birthday card. And if I did not know that person, I would go, whether it be to HR, to their supervisor, or to someone, and I would find out something about them where they were contributing to the overall mission of the company. And I would thank them for that and wish them a happy birthday. I had grown men come to me that I didn't know very well, and they would throw their arms around me and hug me and say, "I just want to thank you. I never had anybody send me a birthday card before." And it was an amazing metamorphosis. And by the time you get to a couple hundred birthday cards, it's a big lift to get that done, but it was the most important thing I did as a CEO. And
Yeah,
then
that's
that radio show, Legacy Radio, turned into something really special. And I'll tell you don't go live. So my Scott Mac Daddy G, he's my kind of my producer, if you will. Mac Daddy G said, Jim, don't do this live. I'm like, why not? He goes, people are going to ask you questions that are going to catch you off guard, and you're not going to be able to answer, or you won't want to answer. And I'm like, I think I can handle it, man. And so the very first time we did it, I get this, the first question I get out of the box. It's like, Mr. Tracy. And that's how you know you're at an organization that needs help, because I'm now Mr. Tracy, not Jim. And so this guy gets on the phone. He says, Mr. Tracy, I was just curious, how much money do you make? I'm like, wow, that's a really great question. But before I answer that question, I wonder how much money you make. And he's like, well, there's a lot of people on the phone. I don't want to answer that question. I'm like, cool, me neither. Next. And we just went on.
that's
And
awesome.
And it was, but that's a natural conversation that you'd have with somebody in an elevator, in a parking lot, in a shop, on a job site. And so, yeah, Nunya, let's go on, let's keep moving. And so when we get leadership that doesn't take an elevator up to an ivory tower, but but walks in the back door and gets a feel for how his people like what they're doing. It happens on a shop floor, on a job site, in a warehouse, in a office complex full of cubicles. It doesn't happen in an ivory tower. And when we separate ourselves from our employees, I, I just met a guy. He's the CEO of one of the largest tower owners in the world, not the U.S., in the world. And I'm like, dude, you drive a truck? He's like, yeah, I drive a truck. And I'm like, well, you park out in the employee parking when you can have your own underground parking and your own elevator and blah, 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 blah. And he goes, that ain't me. Wow. That I admire. That's building culture. That's being with your people instead of isolating. That's
Oh,
intentional. That's intentional culture building. And that's really all the culture revival blueprint is. It's like build a plan of how you want your people to feel,
I love it.
especially when you started. So
I
probably went
love
on
it.
too long, but yeah,
No, 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 that's okay. The only thing I want to mention so we can move on to the next segment I wanted to talk about, which is your book, is I like the legacy radio idea too, though. And what popped into my head and what I wrote down is it squashes rumor mills, right?
yeah.
It squashes the rumor mill because now you give people the opportunity to be bare and vulnerable to you and vice versa, right?
Hmm.
Whether or not it's a quirky little conversation about what you make versus what they make, it takes people's guard down, and
Yeah.
I believe, right? It drops their shield and they become more vulnerable. I think your legacy radio probably got you employees that maybe were on the fence of staying, or maybe their production was lower and now they're more committed, working
Well, and
harder.
then we found out that it worked well enough where the companies that we merged together, now we're 800 employees. And now we can't really do live radio because we've got four time zones that we're dealing with. And so we started something called On Radio, which the new company was on Tivity, and we started On Radio. But rather than bringing in highfalutin guests, we did it on a video format and we did it in a podcast. And so we did start launch this podcast called On Radio. And I was able to bring in sometimes I would bring in a job foreman, someone I was a safety expert. I had the chairman of the FCC come on. I had a member of Congress come on, and but we were talking to our people about things that would affect them and their job. And so even in a podcast format, it was dedicated to the employees. Now, we found out very quickly that other people wanted to listen in, and we had to get them access because our suppliers wanted, and then our customers
Wow.
wanted in, and then all of a sudden our competitors wanted in, and we're like, well, what if this is a good thing? It's a good thing to share. And then when I left that company, that's when we started the Grampian podcast because I just loved talking because I learned so much from people.
Oh, yeah. So I got two things. If you build it, they will come. That's popped into my head. And the fact of the matter is podcasting, like I tell people all the time, how do you pick your guests? I said, well, I go through the emails. I only can do it a couple times a week because I get 100 plus a day. I go through them I read it and I go on my internal compass and
Hmm.
I give it up to God. And sometimes I don't even have to give it up to God. I know right away, right? I know right away because I am my podcast's biggest fan. And here's why people laugh. Oh, that's kind of conceited. No, I get to pick the guests. So I am the host of the podcast. You're the guest lecturer, Jim. You're the
Yeah.
person that I want to learn from. And my community believes in a lot of the same things as me, or maybe I'm farther in their journey than them. But
Yeah.
they know that they can get through there because I've picked guests that are continually keeping me driven to move forward or make it so
Yeah.
I don't slide backwards. But just like your podcast, going from doing that on podcast to doing Grampian, right? They come, they follow. If you build it, they will come. I look at what my
Yeah.
numbers were when I first started. And I started during the pandemic, right? I started
Yeah.
my podcast 290. Oh, you're episode 296, you're going to be, right?
Yeah.
So 296 podcasts. And I look about all the knowledge I've learned and all the free therapy I got. I'm just
That's
being honest,
wonderful. Yeah,
right? Just
for
the
sure.
free business therapy, the free 6 inches between my ears therapy, my spiritual therapy. I seem
Mm,
to attract people, especially on Podmatch and the emails. People have gotten to know my podcast. It's become global, and they literally reach out to me because of my connection to my faith. But I also get a lot of people reaching out to me that are atheists, agnostic,
mhm.
spiritual, because they know that I love everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody's got the seed of greatness. Maybe they've watered it, and their information is going to make a change in somebody's life. I'm always going to be honest about my core values: faith, family, work. Always going to be that way. It's been that way for 30 plus years. My destiny was put in place by God. And I
Yeah.
just got to give it up. And what's your will today, God? Thank you for letting me
Yeah.
open my eyes and I have another day, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about you this morning and I'm having gratefulness, thinking, man, I can't wait to talk to Jim, right? But that connection started. People saying, how do you find people? Well, it's an inner compass. And I believe God brings that person to me because a lot of the guests I have, you'd be shocked. The more I am attuned to my internal compass, the more the guests commonalities and there's so much commonality between my
Mhm.
guests and myself, and it happens. And I'll talk to people. I interviewed somebody a few days ago, and I've had her on twice now, and we were just talking about connection and about this and that. She says, well, why did you want me on a second time? Because I said, I felt like I was stuck. I'd only heard enough, but not enough. And if
Yeah.
I felt that way, you think I had any listeners that felt that way? She says, I never thought about that.
Exactly.
So I had her
Exactly.
on a second time a few weeks later, and that could happen with us because there's so much more I want to discuss.
Yeah. But too, you bring up such a wonderful point. If you're thinking that question, you're not the only one. And just as people, curiosity is kind of it's a bit of a lost art. And I'm not meaning that people aren't
Mm.
curious, but taking the time. That's why long form podcasts are so wonderful because you get to take the time to be curious, to say, oh, this might have been the question that I thought I was going to ask, but actually I'm going to go down a different rabbit trail and make it, and it's just super fun.
It is fun. But
Yeah.
how many people have you had people? I'm not sure how. I can't. I'm sorry because I've had so much since I prepped for this podcast a
Yeah.
couple days ago. I can't remember how long your Grampian podcast has gone, but you've done the other radio stuff as well. How many people do you think look forward to it every single week to
Oh,
get involved in that? Yeah, and how many people have told you your podcast wouldn't succeed? I've had people tell me that long form podcast, you need to be 20, 30 minutes. People's travel time from this to their work and blah 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 blah, your show will never grow. Yeah,
yeah.
well, I proved you wrong and me right, right? That's all I tell people. And I
Yeah.
still get people saying, oh, your podcast can't be that successful. Okay, well, 5.5 years, right? It's not too bad. I've helped a few people. It's helped me more than anybody.
Heck yeah.
And right. And at the end of the day, some people like long form podcasts. You ever heard of a pause button? I said that to
Yeah.
somebody just recently. What do you mean? Well, if I have quite a few fans, or pardon me, I'm a fan of quite a few shows. I hit the pause button. I get back in the vehicle.
Yeah.
I unpause it. I keep on driving. Do you ever listen
Yeah.
to audiobooks? Yes. Well, can you do that in one sitting?
All in one
No.
sitting, I doubt it.
So I said, quit looking at the negative. Look at the
Yeah.
positive. Look at the excitement when I go, geez. Sometimes I've sat in the parking lot because I'm early for an appointment, and I'll listen to a few more minutes, and I'll go, damn, I gotta pause it now, and I can't wait to get. I don't lose focus of where I'm going, but
Yeah.
when I get back, as I'm walking back to my vehicle, I'm going, damn, I get to listen to Jim again.
Here we go. And that's so true of hosts too, because naturally, we wouldn't be podcasts if we weren't curious people. And so I don't want
Oh,
to get back on that too
I am
much, but I can
curious.
tell you that sometimes you think when I started, I was like, I think 30 minutes is the right number. And then I found this really super interesting guest, and I looked up and we were an hour in, and I'm thinking automatically, oh, this is 2 episodes. But what I people didn't come back for the second episode, and the second episode might even have been better. So I mean, and then I got this guy on who was an incredible guest, and I said, okay, we can go an hour. And 2 hours in, I'm like, yeah, we think we better land this plane now. There's no
I love
number
it.
that's right. If it's still feeling interesting and it's stimulating your curiosity, just keep going. It's okay.
Well, see that lady that I had on twice, Laurel, Sierra Laurel, just amazing, amazing, amazing woman. We were like an hour and 35, hour and 40 minutes in, and she had to go. I knew her hard
Yeah.
stop time. So I just quickly paused. I said, and I showed her, and she says, I love it that you're so
Yeah.
prepared. I says, what? We barely cracked the surface. We come
Yeah.
back on again, right? Let's wrap up this episode. I'm going to ask you a few more questions, and then let's have you on again in a few weeks because I'll feel robbed otherwise. That's what I said to her. I said, I'll feel robbed otherwise. And if I feel robbed, there's going to be somebody else that's going, geez, you talked about this in our initial bio, but we never got to that. Right. So,
I wish they wouldn't have stopped. Yeah.
oh, so sometimes I'll have, I think the longest individual podcast I've had is just under 2 hours. And
Mm.
the person was willing to talk, and I was willing to talk. And I put it out there. It was still a highly regarded episode. People liked it. Some of them, I got complaints from individuals. It's too long, whatever. Find your tribe, find
Yeah.
your whatever you want to be
Exactly.
involved in, right? I'm not looking to
Exactly.
please, I'm not looking to please the complainers.
Mm.
So let's get into your book, right? I'm glad
Okay.
you have extra time today. For those
No worries.
listeners and viewers, I asked people what their hard stop time is, and Jim said he didn't, so he's in trouble. No kidding.
Yeah.
I
We're
love
all
it.
good. We're all good.
So, Jim, your book, Building Men Character Lessons from Influencers, is a collection of life lessons shaped by mentors, family, faith, and lived experience. Each chapter you designed is rooted in distinct virtues, including loyalty, courage, perseverance, and meekness, told through vivid personal stories that read less like how-to guide, more like a love letter to the people who shaped you, right? And
Hmm.
we've talked a little bit, listeners, viewers. We talked. Jim's brought up a little bit and stuff, but I really want to know what it was like for you. Like, I'm gonna be a little bit vulnerable for me. Like when I wrote my own book, I found it very cathartic. Right, 5.5 months, wrote it during the pandemic, constantly setting stuff up to the editors, talking to the publisher, trying to figure this stuff all out. And I found it very cathartic because throughout writing it, either there's moments where I was going, wow, I just thought about that and I've never acknowledged, I've never celebrated it. I've never patted myself in the back. And then there was times I was like, wow, man, I should have kicked myself harder in the butt that time. That time. I found it a roller coaster ride. There was times that I was laughing, writing it and reading it again or sending it to the editor. And then there was times I was crying. What was it like for you?
Wow. Well, for starters, people ask me, how long did it take you to write that book? And the first one, I said about 66 years.
That's fair.
And the reason is when I especially when I get off a stage, I people would come to me and they would say, you know, you told this story about this person who invested in you when they didn't have the time, when they didn't, and I'm just a teller of tales and a spinner of yarns, and that's really my first love. Um, and so I would get off the stage and they said, "Hey man, you should put that into a book." And so I made a decision to start, and I didn't know how to put it in order. And so I started by just numerical order, by my chronological age, if you will, or more so, my chronological experiences. And so chapter one starts with my grandpa and it moves through childhood into young adulthood, into business, into success, and into the end, the last few years. And but I wrote about people. And then the chapter titles were about people. And then I realized that all the things that that person gave me were kind of unique. And so, like when I talk about, there's a chapter about my uncle Earl, and he was a fantastic influence on me because this was a very powerful man, physically powerful, mentally tough. But the characteristic that I placed on him was meekness. And meekness is to me strength under control. And I go in about how he showed that to me during my childhood and what it meant to me. There's another chapter. There was this fantastic guy. He worked for my grandpa. He was an administrator. He was a really important and a super busy guy in town. But I would play a football game and I got home, and I'll never forget the very first time. This is the landline times, man. There was no cell phones. So there was a telephone, and it was either attached to the wall or it sat on the counter on the coffee table in the living room. And it's just after dinner, and somebody said, "Jim, the phone's for you." And like, well, I don't get phone calls. I'm in the eighth grade. But I went in and I picked up the phone, and a fellow by the name of Norb Nysa was on there. And he replayed a certain aspect of that game for me. And he told me how it looked from his perspective and why he was proud of me and why I did such a good thing. And he made it sound like wide world of sports. And the chapter that I talk about him is encouragement. Now, he didn't have to call and say that to me, but every time after a game, my dad did not go to my games. My dad had 8 kids. He didn't have time to go to a game, but this fellow had a classmate with me and he came to every game. And he called me after every game. Like it was a game where I I I caught a punt, but I was a lineman. I was the only reason I caught a punt is because I was in the backfield, and I got in the backfield. It was a mistake on somebody else's part, and I end up with the ball. And he it sounded like he was. It sounded like he was Howard Cosell on Monday Night Football. Man, it was and I didn't know you could inspire someone or encourage someone in that that deep of a passion, and that especially when you did. I mean, it was like someone who was too good for me that was telling me how good I was. It was incredible. So I wrote, and every chapter has a defining characteristic about what they gave to me, because most of these people, they didn't have the time, they probably didn't have the energy, they certainly didn't have the need to invest in me, but yet they took the time and they spent the investment, not necessarily monetarily, but emotionally and physically, to let me know that I was important enough to them where they would help me. And
Yeah,
so that's
they
what
breathed
building
into
men
you.
is about. They
Yeah,
did. They did. They
they
did. They did.
Yeah, and I love that though, because most people listening and watching, our brain is very malleable at a certain age, 7, 8 years
Yeah.
of age. We hit that range, it's kind of locked in. But to have somebody reach out to you and breathe into you, to me, God sent that person to you,
Yeah.
right?
For
But
sure. Certainly.
that's the way I look
Absolutely.
at it, right?
No,
So
no, that's absolute truth. That nothing
right?
happens by accident. No, there are no coincidences on this planet. So
No,
I don't believe there are anyway.
well, and we can, if you're a prayer like I am, or anybody listening, watching, you can pray about whatever. You might not get what you want, so then you all, oh, not listening to me, right? I'm being ignored. I'm not cared
Mm,
for. Well, he knows a picture way bigger than you could possibly even understand,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes, you look back at Jesus's time. I'm trying to think of the apostle that had the broken leg, and he didn't heal him until the
Mm,
end, right? Why didn't
yeah.
he do that? And I remember the apostle questioned, why aren't you, and then other people,
James
apostles,
the Lesser.
yes, like why aren't you healing him, Jesus? Like isn't he important enough? There's a rhyme and reason for everything that God does,
Yeah.
right? You just got to be willing to give it up to him and realize that just because you pray doesn't mean you're going to get the Porsche on the drive, or that you're going to have a big bank account, or that you're never going to have trials and tribulations. Trials and tribulations, it's like, here's the marble. What are we going to get at the end, right? You
Yeah.
got to go through things. There's got to be some struggle. And yes, if you've gotten everything in life and you tell me you've never been on the struggle bus, I have a hard time believing that, right?
Well, and we have to look at our lives and say, hey, what's our task? What's our task? And if you're a follower of Jesus, your task is to bring glory to God. And if you do that, it might not look pretty sometimes. It might look ugly, and you might face rejection, and you might get a whole bunch of feedback that's not considered positive in many circles. But if you've done the task, then you're going to get an arm wrapped around you, and he's going to say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant."
Yeah, I one of my best friends, he passed away a few years ago, quite a bit older than me. He'd be, oh my goodness, mid 70s now. And if he hadn't passed away from cancer, but he used to always say what you just said.
Yeah,
Always, right? And if you called his phone and you're like at home or on his cell phone, you were going to leave a message. His outgoing message was always he left a spiritual message, right? And he'd change it up,
nice.
and I used to look forward. Sometimes I'd wish he wouldn't answer, so I could hear
That's
his message.
awesome.
But we were
That's
such
awesome.
close friends. He was my fishing buddy. He was just, oh yeah, we met. Oh, again, long story. I won't get into it, but the way I met him was God infused,
Mm,
right? It was God sending me to help him.
yeah.
He was in lots of pain, and we
Mm,
became good friends. And then I got into this industry, became one of my first clients, him and his wife. And then through him passing away, I built so many good relationships because of him. He was on the struggle bus, off the struggle bus, back and forth. It was right up to the day he passed away. But there
mm.
was just something about his kindness that I could see past all his struggle, and always just wanted to be that support mechanism, right? God kept
Yeah.
on sending me back, right?
And when people have a countenance like that, they draw you in. And when they draw you in, they're doing what they're supposed to do. Because we're not supposed to look like we have an easy life. We're supposed to look like Jesus loves us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, like I said to you earlier, God brings me the guests that we can commiserate, we can laugh, we can enjoy, we can share goodness, trials, tribulations, and
Yeah.
wow. Thank you so much. Again,
No worries.
appreciate you. I appreciate this whole thing because you reached out to me, then you went into LinkedIn. For the people listening, watching. You were tenacious just enough that I thought, wow, okay, I got to take this serious. So right away to your LinkedIn and put in a connection and started reading about you, and just gladness, like
Yeah.
excitement, right? And that's what I love about being a podcaster. People say, "Do you do this to be?" I said, "I've never monetized it." I've had people just recently actually, "Do you want to do this? We'd like to throw an ad." No, why? Because I didn't do it for money. This is my
Yeah.
passion project. I did it during the pandemic when I felt helpless. I thought, how many other people are just like the question thing we talked about? How many other people are
Mm.
feeling helpless? How many other people are devaluing what they've done for society? How they've gone through their struggles, and now they're supporting and helping uplift and helping people live with intent and purpose. How many out there? Who's
Hmm.
showcasing them? And I'm not saying there weren't shows out there already, but I wanted to create my own thing, and podcasting has been a blessing.
There you
God
go.
keeps on driving me forward, right?
Nice.
Keep on doing it, and I meet
Yep.
great people like you. So here's a question for you: for a father or grandfather listening right now, this is about men now who want to raise men of character. Again, nothing
Mm,
against women, but men of character, but honestly is not sure where to start. What is the most real thing that you can tell them?
wow. So there was a guy who taught me a lesson, taught my son a lesson, and he was a principal at a Christian school, and his students would walk in every day, and he would greet every student, and he would shake their hand, and he would say, his name was Dennis. He would say, "Just do the right thing." And by the end of the year, by the end of the second year, by the end of the third year, they're getting kind of sick of hearing just do the right thing. I got it. Just do the right thing. So my son and I are sitting in a Fortune 500 office, and on our side of the table, there's two of us. And on the other side of the table, there's like 10 people. And they're all gradient of management. And so, but there's in particular, there's some young guns that are like trying to make their place in this corporate environment, and they're going to make my partner, my son, look bad to make themselves look good. And the conversation went something like this: um, well, Mr. Tracy, Ryan Tracy, he said, "I'd like to know how you mandate quality, what procedures you do to mandate quality on our job sites." And he was looking for an ASTM specification or this or that. And Ryan said, he said, "Well, we hire the right people and we ask them to do the right thing." And it kind of flustered the young man. And he came back. He came back and he said, "What happens if they don't know what the right thing is?" And Ryan kind of shrugged. He said, "Well, then we tell them to do the best right thing." And this kid did not learn his lesson. And so he doubled down again and he leaned forward and he said, "Well, what about when they don't know the best right thing?" And Ryan smiled and he said, "Well, we give them one of your phones and we ask them to call us and we'll help them understand the best right thing." And my point is that the lesson isn't deep, and it's not got a lot of there's no question about what we should do. The question is will you make the decision? And given an opportunity to choose left or choose right, you should always try to choose the right thing. And sometimes you're gonna know, like I have kids come to me all the time and they're like, I should I do this or should I do that? Well, sometimes it just doesn't matter. Do what you want. But oftentimes you get to choose between the best thing, the best right thing for yourself, for your family, for your faith, for your walk, for your job. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist. If you want to become a man of character, then do the thing that a man of character would do. And if you do that with just a modicum of discipline, and a bit of discernment, all of a sudden you're going to finding yourself doing, and I'm going to take it back to muscle memory again. If you choose the right thing, it gets easier to choose the right thing. If you choose the wrong thing, knowing it's the wrong thing, it gets easier to compromise. And the more you compromise, the worse your life is going to be. So let's not compromise. Let's just choose the right thing on a regular basis. I always see that the bracelet, the old "What would Jesus do?" I'm like,
Hmm.
I think that's cool, but what would Jesus want you to do? Because we don't always get to choose like Jesus. He had infinite knowledge, and he had, and he lived a sin-free life. We don't get that. We have to actually endeavor to try and choose what Jesus would want us to do, and that'd be good enough for me. Man, if I did that every time, my life would be so much better.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's only one person that walked on this earth that was perfect, and it certainly isn't us. We've
Yeah.
got, right, till the day we take our last breath. There's
Yep.
always stuff we can learn. There's always things we can reflect back on. Even things that I look back on in my life that I thought were true and correct. right? I've looked back at stuff and gone,
Mm,
I forgot this part. I didn't necessarily learn the lesson. Maybe it was because of my maturity level at that time, and now my maturity level is different. I've learned more. I've scraped my knee more, right?
yeah,
And now I can look back and go, that was good, but it could have been better. So how
yeah,
can it change me today, right? So people always say the past isn't indicative of the future. It certainly can be, right?
yeah.
Certainly can be. We can
Well,
learn
you
from it
brought up
constantly.
building men of character, and that's why I wrote this book. I mean, the title is Building Men.
Yeah.
Character lessons from influencers, building men. And so I was really surprised when we got the first feedback from Amazon. They said, "Hey, you're the number one new release." I'm like, "Cool." And then I looked, guess what the category was? Single parenting. There's a lot of moms out there. There's a lot of dads out there who are going it alone and they just want some help building those young men and forming those young minds. And so I was stunned because that's not who I necessarily wrote the book for. But I think that perhaps God had other plans for this.
Oh, of course, of course.
Yeah.
Like as a a single parent that raised four daughters and a son. Originally had joint custody. Eventually, I got them permanently full custody. It was a challenge, right? So having a book, I could see why single parents would want to have a book to help define and grow young men,
Yeah.
because men are there's such a learned stigma out there, and learned behavior from the generations of the centurions to the baby boomers to the X generation, millennials, the list goes on. That learned behavior sometime along the way has to be changed. And we just it really struggle to look at people and think to myself, this is what you've now taught this generation. This generation is now teaching the next generation.
Mm.
Who's going to break that chain? Do they
Yeah.
have anybody that's going to say, hey, this is what you need to do to grow a young man properly, or here's
Yeah.
how to help women because of what they go through because of a male dominated society, right? So
Yeah.
I can see why that happened. God made that happen,
Yeah.
right? For that to happen. And I can't even imagine how many people your book has made a difference in their lives, right?
Well, if it's one, it's enough. I love
I
the
agree. I agree.
apprenticeship. I love the apprenticeship model in the picture because if you're a bricklayer, you get your apprentice to haul heavy stuff for you, and you do it so that he can learn the difficulty of lifting heavy things and of holding bricks. And so when he does that, all of a sudden his hands, before he knows it, are more stronger and calloused so that he doesn't drop on bricks on people below him.
Wow.
And then they say, oh, now you're a hodder, now we're going to teach you how to carry a moderate slump liquid on a flat board. And now we're going to teach you to do that just to carry it so you can learn how not to drop that on the people that are carrying the bricks below you. And then we're going to actually teach you to use a hawk and trowel, but we're going to teach you to Lewis do that on the lower levels. So when it comes to the upper levels, you're not wasteful. And so all these progressive learnings happen in an apprenticeship model. Well, when we teach someone not to steal, we don't teach someone not to steal by showing them how to steal. We teach them not to steal because we show them what it takes to earn. And then all those life lessons and all those characteristics are learned by positive influences, never by negative. There's enough negative influences out there. You don't have to go looking for very far. So we have to work harder as positive influences.
Oh, absolutely. There's such a small
Mm,
percentage, sadly, of the population that are positive, critical thinkers, leaders that are willing to step out on faith and be vulnerable to coach and teach others. Because through all coaching and teaching others, there's always criticism. There's always
yeah,
the negative. There's always the devil and evil going to be around, right? So
Yeah.
we need to have that shield of faith, that shield of God to go out and make a difference and not let those little things slow us down, but
Yeah.
appreciate the character building moments, learn from them, find the people that can help you through them if required, or fall back on things that you've been learning yourself that maybe you forgot to get past it. But awareness is so important, wouldn't you agree? So
Yeah.
many people are just clueless, and that's why they get
Well,
stuck, and it's easier to fall backwards than to move forward.
I've noticed that no great coaches ever sat in the cheap seats. They were on the bench with the players. They weren't in the game, but they were of the game. They were about the game. They were telling people, do this, don't do that. Try this, try that. Let's get it together so we can have this common outcome that's good for all of us. It doesn't matter whether you play offense or whether you play defense. If you're a basketball coach and you're on the sideline, you're not up in the cheap seats telling people how stupid they are.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, we're gonna get to the last part of the podcast. Thank you for such a great response. Jim, you have built companies, raised a family, mentored grandkids, flown jets, written books, and stood up for your industry in the Hall of Congress. When you step back from all of it and look at the whole picture, what has this life taught you about what it actually means to give a heck?
Wow. That's like that's like the biggest question that you could ask someone. And the reason I think it is because you could look at all those important things that are certainly relevant to life. But I have to tell you, I have a granddaughter whose name is Holly, and Holly's 5 years old. And this morning, when I went upstairs for breakfast, we live in a multi generational home. As I walked up for breakfast, Holly had on a pink tutu and a green T-shirt and tenny runners, and she had her little blanket around her shoulders. And she ran to me and she threw her arms around my waist and she hugged me and she said, "Grandpa, I love you."
Oh,
All of the investment that I have ever made in anything could never have a payout like a hug from Holly.
wow. I'm thinking about I have a granddaughter that's just in grade one now that just turned 6 a few months ago. And she does similar things to me. They don't live in the same home as me, but they live about 20 minutes away, my daughter, in another community outside of Edmonton. And I had a similar experience. And it's just, wow, profound because she literally
Mhm.
ran up to me, grabbed me around the leg, and looked up at me and says, Papa, she calls me Papa, Papa, you're the best. I love you. And I was just like, and just like all of a sudden, I visualize a puddle of me on the ground, right? Because,
Heart melted.
yeah, she's got me wrapped around her pinky.
Yeah.
And it's just, oh, I love my grandkids.
But
I
there's
just,
nothing disingenuous in them when they do that. They're just expressing in its simplest
pure
form,
joy.
I
Yeah.
love you. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so if I guess if I could get anybody to do whatever it takes so that when you're my age, you get to feel that.
Yeah, it's oh, and I haven't seen I haven't seen my great granddaughter in a couple years, Sabine. And they're because my grandson and his significant other and the baby live on Vancouver Island, which is on the
Mm,
Pacific Coast. For people that are
yeah.
listening and watching, it's just so precious, right?
Yeah.
And I just look at the fact of my grandson says to me, Grandpa, he's 22 now. He says, I've gone through so much trials and tribulations throughout my whole life. You're the only one that didn't give up on me.
Yeah.
And
There you go. Yep.
right
No quit.
there.
Don't quit, man.
Abs-
Don't quit.
Absolutely. Oh, I don't plan on it, brother. So if there's somebody listening right now who came from a small town or a small start and still has not given themselves permission to believe the big life is possible for them, what do you want them to hear?
I've started my first business right out of college. About a year and a half after I got out of college, I started my first business. I moved with my tail between my legs from Minneapolis to Denver, $24,000 in credit card debt, a failed business. My wife got left at home to sell the house and move to Denver to a new job. And I did that pretty well for 7 years. It, uh, and I got in a little disagreement with my boss, and I went out on my own again. And 2 years later, that was a train wreck because the folks stopped buying houses in Denver during that period of time. That was 1993, I think, and yeah, and so there I found myself. Now I've got to move to Seattle after another failed business, and I build up this company for somebody else, and then I figure out that I'm pretty good at this. And so then I start my own company. And so that's about the fourth time was a charm. Don't give up on yourself. And make sure that you're doing the right thing at home before you worry about business. When I was 28 years old, I came to a realization that I wasn't in control of this life that somebody else should be. I wasn't making very good decisions. And I fell on my knees in my closet and I said, God, if you're real, I want to give you a chance because I'm not doing a very good job of this on my own. And I turned my life over to Christ, and the turnaround was immediate. The change took years in terms of my circumstances, and it's not about the circumstances, is what I found out. My only goal before I was 28 was, hey man, I got to make $100,000 a year, and so every ounce of my energy was towards that, and I didn't get there. But when God realized that He could actually trust me with money because it wasn't idle anymore, I think He said, "Okay, Jim, I think you can handle this now." So He blessed me a bit, and don't give up on yourself. But first of all, if you don't make Jesus Christ the Lord and Savior of life, I'm promising you He can do a better job of managing it than you can.
Yeah, I love that. For those listening or watching, if you're not familiar with it, go look up the footprints in the sand, right? Go look up that. I've got it placed in my house on numerous different plaques, along with a serenity prayer as well. You know, at the end of the day, what Jim's saying is right. Don't give up. God's with you. You just have to accept it and embrace it, right? Welcome into your life, right? And those that don't want to, that's fine, right? But if you're feeling that even a little bit of a tinge, a little bit of a helplessness, it can help amazingly, like Jim's saying, right? To change your life. Is there still going to be trials and tribulations? Absolutely. Do you still have to go through the valley of despair to possibly get to that levels of success? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, the best person to talk to about it with it is talking to God, right? For me,
Yeah,
prayers, having gratitude and gratefulness, and then just getting up and doing the right things. And when you don't do the right things, acknowledging it. If it hurt others, acknowledge it, right? Apologize, move forward. Always admit that you're human. You make mistakes, but you're going to help more people than you'll ever hurt if you continue to move forward in a Christ-based way, in my opinion, right? Again, not trying to offend people. I just know what I've experienced in my lifetime.
yeah. And if you're offended, you should probably ask yourself why. Because if I'm right and Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and the only way to get to the Father, to get to heaven, if I'm wrong, I still get a pretty good life. But if I'm right, you should probably go find out why.
Yeah,
What's the
exactly.
risk? What's the risk?
100%. And I'm looking for my tribe anyway. And I talk about God all the time. Those videos I talked to you about earlier before we hit record, those 837 daily live videos that I never missed a day, they all ended with God bless, peace out, right?
God bless. Peace out. There you go,
At
man.
the end of the day, whether people liked it or didn't like it, and if I lose people because I talk about God on my podcast, oh well, teach their own. I'm looking for the willing, the committed, right? I'm looking for commonality. I'm looking for my tribe, and I want to be part of theirs.
There you go.
right? All works good. So, Jim, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for this conversation. You showed up with everything today, your stories, your honesty, your heart for the people behind you and the people coming after you. This is exactly the kind of conversation this show exists to have. A small town kid who built something extraordinary and never forgot where he came from or who got him there. That is a legacy worth talking about, right? So, Jim, where is the best place for listeners to find your book, connect with your work, and get in touch if they want you to speak?
Yeah, just the best place to find the book is Amazon or anywhere you buy books. But if you want to find me, it's thejimtracy.com. I don't think that highly myself. It was the Jim Tracy because there's another one. So yeah, the Jim Tracy, thejimtracy.com, and you can find me there.
Right on. For those new to the Give a Heck podcast, go to giveaheck.com, go to the top hit podcast. You will go down and see very detailed show notes, which will give you chapter summaries. There's a full transcript on there, as well as all of the Jim's social media links, his website link. So don't think that you have to rewind anything. Just go to giveaheck.com. Look for Jim's smiling face and look at the detailed show notes, and you will be able to stay in touch, right? And I highly suggest you look at purchasing his book. I'm interested in it myself. And unfortunately, with my busy career in life, I take forever to get through books. I find I can get through more books listening to them as opposed to reading them. Here's why. When I read a book, because I read so much during the day, contracts and different things for clients, when I read a book, I start falling asleep. So,
All
any
right.
final words before I close up the show?
Oh, I just learned something from you, man. God bless. Peace out.
I, if you go and search some of my videos, I think I got about 500 and some of them on my one channel, not my Give a Heck channels for my podcast. But I have another channel that people have reached out to me and said, "Oh, you weren't kidding. You got," because sometimes I wouldn't think about it. I put them out on social, but I wouldn't think about loading them up on YouTube. But I got 500 and some of them up on there, and you can go see it.
Nice.
People, right? It is what it is. I'm not ashamed. I'm not. am not worried about judgment, right? The only person that's going to judge me is not you or anybody else that's in my sphere, right?
Right on.
So thanks, brother. So,
All
to
right.
everybody listening and watching today, thank you for giving your time to the show. If this conversation added something to your days, please share it. Every time you share an episode, you put this message in front of someone who might need it. And that is exactly what we are here for. Make sure you're subscribed on your favorite platform. And if you have a minute, leave a review. It genuinely helps this show reach more people. You can also watch the Give a Heck podcast on my YouTube channel at Give a Heck. If you're watching there right now, please subscribe. It helps get this message out to more people, and it's exactly what we're trying to do. Until next time, live life on purpose and not by accident. And remember, it is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.